I don't think I've ever been this hungover.
In your late 20s, you stopped drinking.
Stop drinking, yeah.
Very difficult?
No, beautiful. Unbelievable.
Better.
Oh, are you kidding? I would never be sitting here with you. No way, no chance.
Because?
Because I wouldn't have been able to have access to myself or other people, or even been able to take in other people if I hadn't changed my life. No way. And I never would have been able to have relationships that I do. I never would have been able to take care of my father the way I did when he was sick. So many things.
Yeah. Like, I don't drink alcohol anymore. I'm not sober. I don't work a program. What else I do is, my own business.
Right.
I was like, this is a toxic behavior for me. And my whole life it held me back because I knew that I couldn't surrender to something nor give it up. It was like that definition of insanity. You do the same shit over and over again, expecting a different result. I was a complete prisoner of my own behavior. And finally, 3.5 years ago, I was like, I can't do this anymore. Mm-hmm. It doesn't work for me. I'm never going to be that cool girl with the glass of wine at the party. Like, I'll want 3 bottles. That's just my personality. It's my addiction. And when I finally let go of that, it made me realize that I was capable of great change that I totally rebelled about. I was like, I will master this toxic behavior of mine. As if I could, I just did not think I could ever stop. That was a hamster wheel I'd be on my whole life.
It was my priority. As a matter of fact, I don't think I would have quit drinking had it not been for being a dad. You see, what happened to me was alcohol was becoming a love, and it was beginning to crowd out my affections for the most important love, if you're a dad, and that's loving your little girls. And so fatherhood meant sobriety from 1986 on.
Bottom for me was being with Ryan White the week he died in Indianapolis, seeing his family so dignified, forgiving people that had been horrible to them, losing a child and having so much dignity, whereas I, in my life, would complain about everything. And I just knew at that point that my life was out of whack. I knew beforehand, but that was the point I really realized it. And months after that, I got sober and clean. That was a real big turning point for me.
I read in an article, because you never know what you read, but that you saw Elvis, and that was also a turning point, and that you didn't want...
Well, Elvis, when I saw him in Washington, bless his heart, and I'm a huge Elvis fan, it was so sad because he turned into this big man with no eyes, it's sunken in the back of his head, and it was pathetic. And in the end, there are pictures of me when I look at them and think, oh my God, you turned into Elvis. You just shut your door and you gained weight and you did this and you did that and you didn't care how you were, and it's very easy to do that.
But when you saw him, you thought you didn't want to end up like that.
I knew he would be dead within a year if he carried on like that, and he was.
Really? And he was.
Yeah.
And he was.
I knew I had a problem, and the hardest thing for me was I thought I could solve everything myself. Mm-hmm. I can do this. I'm intelligent.
Right.
I'm wealthy. I'm rich. I'm successful. Why can't I do this? I can do this. I couldn't. And for 16 years, I couldn't say I need help. Those 3 words which will save your life. I need help. And as soon as I said that, I was away and haven't looked back since.
Haven't looked back.
No. Just say that if you're in pain and you're afraid to reach out because you think people will think you're weak, or you feel ashamed of asking for help, just swallow your pride. Your pride will kill you. Just ask for help, and people will be there to give it to you.
I watched the interview. It's not.
You won't.
I can't watch it.
Yeah.
It was a weak moment for me.
Yeah.
And I wasn't in the right place. I had started a spiral, and I couldn't catch up with myself. And that was with alcohol. I always had a glitter cup, and it was always filled to the rim with alcohol.
Wow. So on that day, you couldn't take care of your kids, and it was a big day for them.
Yeah, I honestly couldn't even tell you who got them ready. I was just dazed and confused, and I just wanted to go to sleep. I didn't take them trick-or-treating. I didn't show up for my family, I took the picture and I made the world think that I showed up.
It was the wake-up call Jessica says she needed. The next day, she quit drinking and started working with a therapist.
I just realized that I had to surrender. I just want to continue on the path that I'm on, and at this point in my life, now I'm strong enough to deal with anything that comes my way, because I don't have something to retreat to that will numb me from actually going through it.
Certainly for me, you know, what I realized was I was running to things to avoid tough feelings, painful feelings. I just didn't know how to deal with them, and looking for anything I found that I use for escape, to escape those kinds of I guess difficult feelings. I don't know how better to describe it. I mean, that can be anything. That can be drugs, booze, Netflix, you know, snacks, anything. I don't want to, at this point, to be running from anything. I want to sit in it. I want to feel it. I want to get through the rough night. And I found, in doing so, you come out the other side with a more profound understanding of yourself, a greater gratefulness for those in your life, and the birds and the trees and everything else.
How hard has that been to get sober? I mean, to stay sober, how difficult is it on a scale of 1 to 10? 10 being like it's ridiculously hard.
I'll tell you the truth. It depends, right? At the beginning, it's very, very hard. That's 10. Okay, you start off because you're in the habit of doing this, whatever it is. And, you know, compulsive behavior, it's like if you limit to alcohol or alcohol and drugs, it's a sort of certain segment of society. If you look at the people that overeat, eat their fucking feelings, and end up just as unhealthy, it's a lot more. If you look at people who shop and gamble or have sex or relationships or use the fucking phone, we're very programmed to seek out rewards and get compulsive about it, gamble, whatever. Nonetheless, it's hard because you've taught yourself this is the only way to ease my pain. I'm in pain, this is the only way to make it better. And I used to go to meetings and hear all these like old timers say, I'm a grateful alcoholic and you know, the obsession left me a long time ago. And I would get so angry, you know, I'd be like, you're not grateful. What are you grateful for? You f***ed your life up, you're grateful, congratulations. Boy, I want some of that too. And the obsession left you, what the f*** are you doing here? You don't want to drink? You're not an alcoholic, get the f*** out of here. I'm dealing with problems. I want to have a drink. How about that? You know, you're just, and I resented that for a long time. And I went through a series of, you know, I got sober for a year and a half. I wanted to be sober. I committed to it. And the problem with that fight is like, you can win 1,000 times, you know, you only have to give in once. And you're never going to win all the time. Right. So something fundamental has to change. And I hate to say it, but the cure for addiction, the only cure I've seen, and not like these overpriced rehabs or a lot of these fraudulent fixes that are sold to people. They're good people who will support you. Alcoholics Anonymous, I think by and large, is a good organization. It's not the only one. The cure for addiction is suffering. You suffer enough that something inside you goes, I'm done. And I'm like lucky because I hit that point before I lost really the things that were the most important, which were not my career or money, but was my relationship with my kids. And when I felt as if it impacted them, I recognized it. It was the worst day of my life. I made amends. And I, for a while, I thought maybe this is temporary. Maybe this feeling is going to go away. But since that day, I swear to Christ, I have not ever wanted to drink once. Ever. Wow. So it's the easiest thing in the world. Because every time I think about it, I'm just like, holy shit, that's the worst idea in the world. I don't want that. I can't do that. And that's the piece that people find. So now I'm that asshole who's like, you know, I'm grateful. I learned a lot. I actually got to be a better person through this process, and I've lost the obsession.
There's been many forks, unfortunately. My story had many ups and downs, and I've hit rock bottom in different aspects of my life. There was one moment where I was drinking vodka out of a Sprite bottle at 9 in the morning at the airport, and I had thrown up in the car service. And I just thought to myself, this is no longer glamorous. It's no longer cute. It's no longer fun. I'm like my dad. And I felt pathetic, and I knew that I had to change. So the next day I went on American Idol, still hungover, and Afterwards, we had an intervention with my team, and I made a decision in that moment that I was going to change my life around. My addiction with drugs and alcohol was very severe to where I had several scares, and I knew that at the rate that I was using and drinking, I wasn't going to live a long life. I knew that I didn't drink and use for a long period of time, 40 years, like a lot of people sometimes deal with drug and alcohol addictions. I used very fast, very hard.
It was more just that I lost everything. Like
Oh, you did?
I mean, I was practically homeless. Like,
how old were you when you
I was 24 when I got
drinking?
sober. But, you know, I came out of school and I had wanted to be, you know, it's a funny thing too with the hubris of youth and of me in particular. Like, I came out of school thinking that I would come to New York and New York would be like, oh, now we understand, like, welcome. And New York was like, what? Like, and I was a big failure early on with like I had a theater company, I had all these artistic pretensions, and I basically wound up not being able to make any money, people not liking anything that I did, and just being, you know, practically kicked out of my apartment, unable to support myself, unable to hold down like a waiting tables job. My friends all started to abandon me because I was a very angry and horrible human being to be around. And then finally, like, my girlfriend, who I never thought would leave me, like, left me. And so I just got to this point, and I was about to be kicked out of my apartment.
What were your parents in all this?
They were, like, helping. Like, my mom was helping me, like, on the down low, like, kind of giving me money, but they were kind of getting sick of me, too. I mean, you know, it was awful. It's that awful thing that you hear every alcoholic talk about. And if they don't talk about it, they're lying. Like, you just become an awful human being. Like, you just, you're selfish.
Was there a moment that was like the crystallizing, like, oh yeah?
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna kill myself, and then,
really?
You know, I did. Oh yeah, but I didn't have the, you know, I'm gonna say courage to do it. Like, I didn't have the. I had a cat, and I was. This is a funny thing where, like, I actually had a baby cat. And I remember reading somewhere that if there's a dead body in an apartment, because I didn't have any friends too, so my body would have stayed in the apartment for maybe weeks and nobody would have discovered had I paid my rent. And I was like, apparently dogs won't eat you, but cats will eat you. They will eat your body if they run out of food. And I was like, wow, like, I don't want my poor cat to, like, Jesus. You know what I mean? And so I was like, so that was the moment where I was like.
Are you telling me that if you didn't have a cat in your house, you would have killed yourself?
Maybe. I mean, that could have been a ruse. But I did wake up the next morning, and I had a friend who'd been sober for 1,000,000 years, and I called him, and I was like, hey man, like, you know, my life's in trouble. And he was like, why don't you get sober? And I was like, no, man. It's like I just need a new girlfriend. No, I need a girlfriend. He was like, why don't you get sober? And I was like, no, man. I just need a new job. If I get a job. And he's like, why don't you get sober? And I was like, no, man, it's the jelly donuts. Like, I gotta stop eating the jelly donuts, and then I'll be fine. He was like, why don't you get sober? And I was like, maybe I'll get sober. And it just broke, and I went to a meeting, and then it is that thing where it's just, you know, your life just changed, and people are nice to you finally when, like, no one's been nice to you. You've lived in a world like the drinking world and the kind of druggy world that I was in, just like everybody's miserable and they're all mean to each other constantly. You're just nasty all the time. And then you, like, go to a meeting and people are like, hey man, like, and you're like, just so, it's so confusingly wonderful.
And I just sort of said to myself, like, why am I enslaved to this drink? Why am I so obsessed by the idea of having this drink? I just wanted to do dry January, and all I could think about was having a drink. It's all I could think about. I was waking up thinking about it. I was checking the clock, when's it 12? And it just really scared me. I just was like, wow, maybe I have a little bit of an alcohol thing. So I sort of decided to punish myself and say, I'll do February as well. I'll do 2 months off. If I can do 2 months off, then I can prove to myself that I don't have a problem. 2 months go by, and I was still really struggling. I felt like I couldn't be social. I felt like I couldn't go to the pub and have a lime soda. I couldn't go out for dinner. I was really, really struggling. And I started to really worry that maybe I had an alcohol problem. So I decided that I would wait until my birthday, which is June 1st. I said to myself, if I can do 6 months without alcohol, then I can prove to myself that I don't have a problem. And by the time I had got to June 1st, I was the happiest I've ever been in my life. I could sleep better, I could handle problems better, things that would go wrong on set that would normally set me off, I could take in my stride. I had such better mental clarity. I felt healthier, I felt fitter. I'm happy to say, I was definitely addicted to alcohol, not shying away from that at all. I think anyone that anyone that has a beer every day is probably got a little bit of a problem. And I just felt so much pressure, and this is one of the things why I've sort of distanced myself from the rugby community, because so much of it is about how much can you drink, let's get you as drunk as possible. And it's honestly been the best thing I've ever done. I'm a year and a half into it now. It doesn't even cross my mind. I've found amazing replacements that I think are fantastic, ones that are also really healthy. This time, I don't know, it was just different. I really worked to sort of change my mindset. I really asked myself, why do you drink? Why are you drinking? And a lot of the time, my answer would be to feel more comfortable in the social environment.
Yeah.
And I just put myself in those environments and just would force myself to be there. I'd force myself to hang out and go to a club or go to a bar, go to a dinner.
You look very good. You look.
Oh, thank you.
What have you been doing?
Pay you later.
What's your tip?
I quit boozing like a year
Cold
ago.
turkey?
Yeah.
I saw you
White
a year
knuckling.
ago, drunk at the Michigan game.
Hammered.
So it was after
videos.
that?
making Instagram videos. Oh, I'm sorry. November 24th. Not like I'm like a AA sober guy.
Yeah.
I was just, I was getting, I was having a couple of 2, 3, and it just started bothering me once I had a kid. I'm like, I have a baby upstairs, toddler, who's sleeping right now, and I am legally hammered.
Yeah.
Not drunk.
Yes.
Hammered.
Yeah.
You know what's funny? The last day I drank, I was watching Michigan, Ohio State.
So
and I was
after
drinking this stuff,
Thanksgiving.
Kentucky Owl.
Uh-huh.
Ooh, I recommend that. It was delicious. And I remember saying to my friend as I was drinking my last one, I was going, dude, I'm never fucking quitting. I was having that much fun. And then the next day I was just like, I need to go on a little bit of a, and you need to kind of put yourself in dry dock.
Yes.
For a second. So I was just like, then I'm like, God damn it, it's the holidays. How do you do that during the holidays? It's so hard. And I just went on a little bit of a streak, and I went to this party, and we were all going to do a shot. We were going to have some bourbon. We were going to smoke cigars. And it just so happened that a commotion, it wasn't just a bunch of guys. It was women too and kids and stuff. So there was just too much of a commotion. It never happened. And then I got into double digits. And I was just like, all right, well, let me just see if I can go through Christmas. And then once I got through New Year's Day, I go to the Rose Bowl every year.
Oh, the best.
And get loaded, right?
Football heaven.
Yes. So I was just like, I'm not drinking this year. And then I just started telling people, I'm not drinking this year. I'm not drinking this year. And it's easy now, but it sucked for like the first 3-4 months. It just sucks. It took me.
Took you to have a kid?
You to 50. Wow.
Yeah.
No, it's not even 50. I had to have a kid. If I didn't have a kid right now,
I
would be hungover and about 30 pounds heavy.
Of the different projects you've done, which one changed you the most?
It wasn't work.
It wasn't work?
No.
So what was it then?
I got sober.
How hard was that?
That was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And it is a most human thing to say, I am in trouble, I need help. We overanalyze it, we over-verbalize it, and I think it scares people off because it seems daunting. And I can tell you from my own experience that the single greatest accomplishment of my human life was arresting my addiction to opiates and alcohol. And I talk to people all day long about addiction because it is not if it's a secret, it will kill you. If it's not a secret, you may be able to save your own life.
So what would you tell yourself about that process that you wish you had known before you had embarked on the process of sobriety?
You know what? The truth of the matter is, Nobody is ready until they're ready. Nobody can hear things until they're ready to hear them. And so there would be nothing I could have said to me that would have helped me in that moment. I had to come to that understanding myself and seek help the way I did. We all would like to go back to our younger selves. How old are you?
33.
All right, you're 33. I'm going to be 60 in November on Thanksgiving. We all would like to go back to our 15-year-old self, and we'd all say, lighten up. It's going to be okay. You're beautiful. You're going to have a happy life. We all would like to go back to our 15-year-old selves and give ourselves a hug and a real cuddle and say it's going to be okay. Everybody walked through broken glass and fire in their adolescence. Everybody, nobody got through that unscathed. It is the it's the process of human evolution. It's a difficult time. And so the message I would give you, me, and anybody who's watching this anywhere in the world is you're going to be okay.
Booze, drugs, gambling, suicide. What do you know about your mom's family history?
As family trees go, every leaf on my mom's family tree is, I think I can pretty safely say, everyone, except for my generation, like my cousins, I don't even think dead or dying even counts anymore. I think they're all dead. I think they all died from alcoholism or suicide. Yeah, I think that I had a really uncomfortable childhood. I think that I have tendencies to be super, super uncomfortable now. Just because I'm clean and sober doesn't mean that I don't suffer from alcoholism. It could be said that you don't really suffer from alcoholism until you get sober. Because, alcoholism's depression's how it impacted me. If you're asking how alcoholism impacts me, it continues to maybe get worse even.
How?
It's a progressive illness. You have to the importance of doing the stuff that sober people do to manage the problems that come up in life. It becomes even more important. I can say I'm legitimately grateful to be an alcoholic because alcoholism really is, I think, the only disease where after you get the disease and treat the disease, you end up potentially better than you were before you even got it. Any other disease, you can only hope to get back to as healthy as you were. But with alcoholism, and because of alcoholism, when you treat it, now you can become way better than you were before.
I do often say that, and then when I go home, people get very, very upset.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. It wasn't their fault, but there was liquor readily available.
It's part of the Southern culture.
It is.
It's part of everybody's
But also,
culture.
it's very mature at such a young age to realize that that was a problem.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I don't know if it was maturity or just really stark kind of facts staring me in the face. I just really loved acting. I think if I hadn't already connected to acting and wasn't already so set on my trajectory or what I wanted to accomplish, I wouldn't have had a reason. But at that point, it was very clear that my drinking habit was getting in the way of what I wanted to do and how hard you have to work to be a successful actor. I knew that. I had some sense of that. And I went to a training school where they were just really, really hard on us and mean to us as a precursor to being in an industry that can be really hard on you and mean to you. So I already kind of was seeing the fact that it wasn't great to be hungover or to be not remembering what happened the night before, whatever, things like that I'm really lucky that I did tackle this before I came into our business. Because everyone who is in that place or who is struggling with mental health or anxiety or depression thinks that they're in it alone, because that's part of the disease. So I think it's important to remind everyone that, you never know what people are going through, and you never know what people have gone through in their past. And it's not easy either. I mean, I have times still where I'm like, gosh, everyone here is drinking to relieve stress. I would love to have a drink, but it's not worth it. It's not worth it for me to have a drink.
I would call it a problem. It's now not a problem. I drank in search of happiness and in search of a lifestyle that I thought would bring me to happiness. It didn't, and I woke up one morning going, wow, I've drank a lot, but I'm still not happy. What's that about? And, now we're about a year and a half later, and my life has turned around immeasurably. It's a wonderful thing. And I say to anybody watching or you're listening to this that it's that there is a lot of pressure on young people not to drink necessarily, but to find happiness through going out and getting mashed, and that's fun, and you have a good time, and good luck to you. But if it doesn't work for you, and if you keep waking up going, I don't seem to be having nearly as good time as most of my friends, then think about it. It doesn't have to be something you do, is all I'd say to people. I think, in fact, that's one of the things that is most frustrating in a way, is the fact that there is such an expectation that we should all just be happy. And it doesn't matter if you're financially very, very well off and have and I'm incredibly grateful for that and so unbelievably lucky. But at the same time, that doesn't solve all of life's problems. There is still other stuff, and it's mainly just my own head is trying to, I'm not going crazy one day at a time. That's my mission at the moment.
That was my whole thing, was I'm providing. So that I let myself off the hook for a lot of bad behavior because I was providing.
Right.
I never talked to my daughter about the effect my alcoholism had on her. I'm sure it was, she turned out great, but she had her mother and her grandmother to teach her manners.
Do you think that because of the stuff you've gone through, you have a propensity for accepting guilt or assuming that it's your fault?
I can't let myself think like that. I'm pretty, if I'm at fault with something, I will try to correct it. And I'm pretty open now about seeing what that is. But if I start wallowing in guilt, which I do, I'll go down to a path where it's no good. It's no good because I'm depressive anyway.
Well, it sounds like you've come out the other side of that, at least being able to recognize it.
For today, yeah.
For today?
Yeah.
That's sort of how an alcoholic has to live, right?
Yeah.
One day at a time.
It is, and that's all the cliche signs they hang up at the meetings, they're all true. And I found that out early on. Believe the cliches, because they're cliches for a reason. One day at a time, that's all I've got. If at any time I felt like drinking, I put it off for an hour or make myself call somebody. It never happened yet, but you're one day at a time. You're only sober one day at a time.
Well, I haven't had a drink for a long time now, but for the first 10 years of that period, a lot of my thinking behavior didn't really change. It was a slow evolvement, really, and it was only then and after I'd had my children, my daughter and my son, I began to realize, and it's actually clear in the film, and I can see it in a form of desperation, that here I am suddenly faced with responsibility and that I had to do something about it. So for me, but to have living beings close to me, my flesh and blood, that I would have any kind of inclination to walk away from, started to have an effect on me. And then I tried to become an example to them. And I don't know how to do that to this day. I really, because I'm quite an isolationist by nature. And so to actually be able to consider what my behavior does to other people is still a very kind of difficult thing for me to apprehend. But it's getting better. the first whole, when right up to the time I stopped drinking, everything I said is absolute blather. I was talking to Lily about, well, she doesn't agree with me. Obviously, she's not going to agree with me. But there's a certain amount of pompousness that I see when I'm being interviewed, and this sort of, I don't know, some kind of weird expression on my face, like, don't ask me these questions, I know all this stuff. And that's really tough for me to watch, obviously, because, and maybe it's true for all of us when we're young, there's a level of arrogance there about, I know it all. Well, only as I get older do I realise that I know nothing at all whatsoever. So for me to watch myself going through all of that, it was not easy.
But the first 10 years, were you not even enjoying it then?
What, making music?
Well, the entire career, really.
Not the entire career, no. I don't like having my picture taken. I don't like talking to journalists, but I love playing music. No offense. It's nothing personal. It's just I don't know how to do it. I really don't know how to do it, and so it can take up a lot of time if you're in that industry, So.
I think if somebody wants to quit drinking, and there's so many different ways you do it, just do it the way that makes you quit drinking. Like you asked me the question if I want to quit smoking. Well, it doesn't matter if other people want you to quit smoking or other people want you to quit drinking. It takes you to do it. And I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm never going to drink again. I think I've had one Crown and Diet Coke in 6 years. But I don't think I'm the type of guy that needs to go to the meetings and to involve myself into all that over again, because that's the reason I started drinking again back when I started really drinking a lot after Betty Ford in 97.
What about that made you?
I couldn't stand to go to the meetings and listen to everybody how they used to drink, why they did this or this and that. It just, I didn't want to live in the past. And I know I went to a lot of different meetings. I know I should maybe kept going and going and going to them, but I just gave up on the meetings. And there's nothing wrong with that. Nobody says you have to go to the meetings. Nobody says that's the 100% cure either. But I just feel like for people listening to this interview that if you want to quit something, you don't always have to listen to the people that are telling you to quit. It's not going to do you any good. You got to listen to yourself if you want to quit something. That's called the first step, basically. You admit that you have a problem. Now you have to do something about it. Nobody can make anybody quit anything.
There were two different occasions when you were, I think, on the highway driving to rehab, where you had actually contemplated suicide.
Yeah, I was on a mountain in Palm Springs, ready to just drive off of it.
What were you thinking about then that had you in that mental space?
I think just getting pulled a million different ways and trying to take in what everybody was saying, and then I got to go to rehab in 92 or whatever. I don't know, I just thought, is it really worth it? But I think just knowing I had kids, or if it was Shina, that I want to watch her grow up. I don't want her to lose her dad.
Speaking of kids, it was little John and wanting to get custody of him. Your girlfriend Anna was telling me that really made you stop drinking cold turkey. What was it about that really was what got you to stop?
It was very, very tough. Sherry made it very difficult to see him, and it got to the point where the judge had had enough and blah blah blah. But when I was getting him, we just had the time of our lives, and I didn't have to go sit at the club here and get drunk. I didn't have to go out and get drunk. I didn't have to go do this. I just wanted to be with him.
I used to have a few drinks to get on stage because I'm sort of innately a shy person. And to step out on stage and to sing and be in front of people was nerve-wracking for me in a lot of ways. And that was the way I got my courage, some liquid courage with a little Jack Daniels that I could get on stage and sing. And I couldn't do it without doing that. And early on, my mom had told me that you need to stop doing that in order to go on stage, or it's going to become an issue for you. I grew up in Louisiana, and we used to drink Miller Ponies sitting on a tailgate around a bonfire. I mean, that was part of the culture of growing up for us. You know, you can come up with a million excuses why you drink too much. Lack of confidence, the success that came so quickly, and then some of the things that you didn't realize was trauma, I guess, back when you were 11, the things that we were talking about back when you were 11 years old and you find that birth certificate, all the trauma that caused with everybody around you, and you didn't think it caused any trauma to you so much. I think the older you get, sometimes you start realizing those things. So I think that all of those things started coming into play, and it got to the point where I knew that I drank too much, and I knew that it was affecting my personal relationships, it was affecting my professional relationships, it was affecting my family. It was turning me into a person that I didn't want to be. And I knew that I was at a point where I could lose everything that I had in my life. It's first and foremost my family. And it's time to stop. And I stopped. I had a complete blowout drinking one night, the night before tour started. Flew to Florida that morning from being wasted the night before, and started that tour and haven't drank since. And that was the toughest tour that I've ever done in my life, is to get through that tour not drinking. I'd never done it before. I'd never done a show. I don't think I could probably count on one hand the times I'd stepped on stage where I didn't have alcohol in me or something. And that was the toughest thing about it.
I was becoming an alcoholic, had no concept. It just, to me, it was a normal thing to get up in the morning and have a beer for breakfast and to have a beer for lunch, and to never really, I was never the drunk. I was the Dean Martin drunk. I was the golden buzz, where I knew all my lines. I never missed a show. You know, I was right there. So nobody saw any problem. Cheryl didn't see it. Shep didn't see it. Then all of a sudden, physically, it started getting me. Pancreas, everything. I was throwing up blood. And that's when I had realized I was going to join all my other buddies, you know, if I didn't stop this.
You mean Morris and Hendrix?
Yeah,
the whole line.
All the guys.
Now, when you broke away from the band, you were about what age?
I think I was about 26, 27.
All right, so you go on your own, you're losing your true self.
Absolutely, I was absorbed into it, yeah.
Fair to say you're becoming conflicted about who you are?
Yeah. We did 65 cities in 72 days at one point. But when you're 26, you're bulletproof. You're indestructible.
You think you are.
You think you are. Internally, it was, you know, I mean, every night there's an audience, packed audience. You could do 6, 7 shows in a row, you know, because then it got to a point where you couldn't do that. Physically, I was starting to break up, you know, and I started looking at the costume before the show and going, because I knew I was killing myself.
And the wife split and went back to Chicago.
Well, at the end of that, yeah, there were a couple of shows after that, and I was way into cocaine then. I was into the LA blizzard of 1980, where everybody did cocaine. It was like crazy how much cocaine there was in LA. I fell right into that. Having an addictive personality, got way lost into that. And Cheryl says, when you get through with that, I'll be in Chicago. That got my attention.
And so you did what?
Well, I quit the cocaine. I flushed a rock about that big down the toilet and got sober. But then I had to tell her, okay, I'm sober now. And she goes, right. It's going to take a lot of proof on that one. But the good thing that came from that was that in order to get her back, she says, here's part of it. We have to go to Christian counseling, and you have to set it up, not me. I want to see you set this up. So I did. And we went into Christian counseling and got our marriage back together and started going to church. And I, you know, as much as I dragged my heels, I really knew I needed to do this But what came out of that was the most amazing thing was when I left there, I went right to a bar, sat down and had a Coca-Cola and was waiting for that craving. I said, I'm going to be around alcohol all my life. I better just confront it. All right, well, nothing happened there. Tomorrow morning, though, it's going to be hell because I'm going to be home and the first thing I'm going to want to do is have a beer. Woke up the next morning and there's no craving. For 37 years, there was no craving. It went, it was gone. The doctor said it was like you had cancer one day and the next day you didn't have cancer.
Well, this is what has always intrigued me about the story. It appears that you just quit to use the cliche cold turkey.
Except I didn't go through any withdrawals. I didn't go through the whole thing of AA and I didn't go through any of all of that. I just was a bit shocked that I wasn't having any cravings for it. I was just being normal.
Well, you've been quoted as saying on a number of occasions that Jesus saved your life.
Oh, absolutely. To me, he basically said, be a rock star, but follow me. I don't care if you're a rock star. Just, you know, your lifestyle is going to be your testimony. Can you go out on the road and not go to the strip bar? Can you go out on the road and not cheat on your wife? Can you go on the road and not become a drug addict? I went, yeah. So he said, well, not without your help.
Been through a very dark time in your life. You took a 5-year hiatus. How did you pull yourself out of that dark time?
Well, it was a process, man. It took me a while to actually admit, you know, that I had a problem. I mean, you know, in the hip hop world that I live in, I think that it could be mistaken for weakness. And the last thing you want to do in hip hop is admit that you're weak. But if I didn't admit that I was weak with this certain thing, I was gonna die, you know, so.
How close did you come?
I certainly probably a couple hours away from death. Not to make this too tense of a moment, but yeah, I overdosed and almost died.
How did you mentally turn it around? Because like you say, you are a strong, tough, macho guy. How did you do it?
Well, I had to admit that I had a problem. I had to, I think I had to be ready for myself. Like, I had to be ready for me. I know that it's, you know, I don't mean to make it sound cliche, but you have to do it for yourself. You know, you can't do it for other people. And I think that when I went to rehab the first time back in, I think 2005, I felt like I was doing it for other people. I wasn't doing it for me. So I kind of went in, fought the system, didn't really want to listen to what anybody had to say about it. And I felt like, well, I don't have a problem like these people, you know. I just take this because I just take these pills because I can't sleep. I have a sleeping problem. I just take, you know, Vicodin for recreation, you know, like, but.
An excuse for everything.
Definitely. And, you know, then I went through a really rough period after I came home from rehab and I lost my best friend and kind of the reins were off. It was kind of just like, you know, screw it. This is like, you know, and from there I really went downhill. And that's when I overdosed, got out the hospital, relapsed a short time after that, basically scared of myself and went to some people and was like, yo, I got a problem, I need help, I can't beat this on my own. Because the whole time I think I was thinking that I could, but I couldn't.
Would you talk about booze for a moment?
If you like.
As a kind of maybe public service or whatever.
I think I've done enough public service in that direction. However, if it helps anybody, yes.
Well, it might very well. I guess what I want to know is how do you know when you're in trouble with your...
I think that nobody quite knows which drink it is that takes him over the edge of being merely a social or hearty, laughing drinker into a morose and hungover, wretched creature who shakes and creaks and sweats and has nightmares and is always November and it's raining and it's 3 o'clock in the morning and there's nowhere to go, and you reach out for a cigarette and smoke and think of all the horrible things you've done in your life and all the shames you've endured and suffered, and the shame you gave other people, and all the wrongs you've done other people. I don't know whether alcoholics can put it quite as eloquently as that. Usually they just say, I just stared out of a window for 2 years. And it is, believe me, the question of being an alcoholic, I'm not quite sure that I am one, but if I'm not one, I'm very near. I'm right on the edge of being one. But it is no laughing matter. It really is not a laughing matter. Alcoholism is a dreadful disease. And my sympathy I believe there are something like 15 million Americans alone who are alcoholics. And my sympathy for them and my affection for them is profound. They come up to me, as being a representative figure of this dreadful disease. And one of the things they love to do is to tell stories about what they got up to when they were drunk. And I listen and I laugh, and they genuinely found me some of the stories. But it is a tragic disease and a dreadful one. And I think, no, I can't say that I've beaten it, because as Jimmy Breslin, who was a dear friend of mine, wrote me a short but very eloquent letter once, some years ago, when I was in trouble with drink. And he said, don't forget the drink. And he used the analogy of a boxing match, and that you're always fighting. You're always fighting. And the other fella is booze. And you evade him. You evade him. But one of these days, unless you're careful, he's going to nail you right on the chin. And down you go. So it's a continual fight. Every day it's a fight. When you get through the day and you finally put your head on the pillow and you sleep, you say, I've beaten that boxer for yet another day. And so for the rest of your life, you're stuck with that shadowy figure, always coming at you, always coming at you. And there is every conceivable excuse. Take a drink. I got a bad note, so I take a drink. I got a good note, so I take a drink. As to one would if you didn't have my particular self-control and, of course, the enormous assistance of my wife. Without Susan, I think, without any exaggeration whatsoever, I might very easily be dead. I'm not joking, I mean that. When I played Equus in New York 4 years ago, it was the first time in my life I'd ever been on the stage without a drink. And I shook and I shivered, and she knew, Susan knew. And I had, as you know, an enormous success in that. And the audiences were fantastically kind, and they gave me standing ovations and all that, but every night we never knew if I'd crack. And never once, for instance, did she hide the booze or anything like that. There was a bottle of vodka and there was a bottle of gin right in the dressing room. All I had to do was open the door and there it was. And it was, I was in it for 12 weeks. And one performance which Tony Perkins very kindly gave me on a Saturday matinee to sort of run me in before anybody knew I was going to be in it, that I was opening. So we counted the performances. It's the only time. I don't count them in Camelot because I'm over that hurdle. But he's still there. That fellow's still there. And all I can say is to anybody in this country or in the world who has the same problem, you have my deepest sympathies, and I hope you have a wife like mine, that's all.
I mean, for me, like, I think looking back at my career, I think I was probably hiding a bunch or compartmentalizing a bunch of the stuff that I was going through, just because I think I was always taught that weren't allowed or weren't supposed to show a weakness or something like that ever because of being an athlete. You're supposed to be strong and be able to push through anything. So I think, my struggles carried on through my career and I hid them really well. But I think really going into the last Olympics, I was just ready to kind of open up and let everything come out. And for me, this is something that is very important. And there are so many people that struggle from very similar things that I go through and still go through.
And if
I found a way to get through it, and I'm now addressing these issues that I have, and I'm openly talking about them. I mean, I'm still struggling weekly or, from time to time I'll have bad days where I do go into a depression state or, for me, like I was so down on myself. I didn't have any self-love and quite honestly, I just didn't want to be alive. It was a really, really, really crazy time for me and I didn't want to see anybody because, for me, like I saw myself as letting so many people down and me, myself in particular, and that's hard to carry. And I think over those 3 or 4 days where I didn't want to leave my room, I didn't want to talk to anybody, I finally realized that I can ask for help and it's okay to not be okay. And for me, that's what changed my life. I never asked for help really ever in my career. And that was the first time that I really did that. And I was, like you said, I was basically on my knees just crying for help. And I'm lucky to be able to sit down with a therapist and chat and talk and open up. And it's challenging for people to do. And I think it's, for me now, being able to work with Talkspace and traveling as much as I do, to have the access on my phone where I can pop on whenever I want, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and get the help that I need. It's something that continues to teach me more and more about myself. And I think that's something that's kind of fun for me moving forward, especially with 2 kids. Kind of getting to that point where you're ready to surrender and ask for help and break down and be that person that is going out there and getting the help that you need. I think, if you look at something like Talkspace where we live on our phones, right? Like, how easy is it to pop on and talk to a therapist, get help? Because if you're going into a therapist, you're missing work, you're taking time away from the kids, you're doing this, you're doing that. And I think this is something that's just accessible. And honestly, being able to open up the conversation about it, I think is something that's so important. Really trying to take the stigma away, and especially with kids too. Being able to open it up to kids. And if you look at some of the stats where 1 in 5 kids from 13 and up will have some kind of mental health illness. And by 24, 75% of kids will have something. So, the numbers are shocking and something has to be done. And I think this is, for me, it's an honor to be able to be a part of something like Talkspace because it's not only helping me and I know it has the possibility to help so many other people.
That if I do, I'll wind up doing too much.
For sure?
For sure. I can't control it.
It's just the way you are.
Just the way I am. And I don't want to push it again because when I get that way, my kids don't talk to me. I get a divorce. I'm thrown out of my own band.
Right.
What else? I lose everything. That's happened enough times for me to finally realize, you know what? It's not worth it.
Right. I get it.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I got a lot of beautiful friends. I got a beautiful bunch of friends to keep me in line. I got 2 sponsors, one on the West Coast, one on the East Coast, that I call up all the time and go, I want to get so up right now.
How does that work when you call them out? What do they say? Don't do it, Steven.
No.
Do they ever say, dude, I do too, but I keep it together?
Exactly. No, they'll just say, what else is new?
Do you guys ever talk about it the way like fat people talk about food they used to eat?
No, because we don't do that. What is it called? Looking back and digging into the dinosaur shit. No, we don't do that. Nah.
But you do if you go to like an AA meeting. They do get up and tell awesome stories.
Oh,
getting f***ed up, right?
See, when you get sober, if you don't continue your aftercare by going to a couple meetings every now and then, you're going to wind up using again.
Really?
Especially someone like me who watched Janis Joplin up there. Okay, 1968. I'm in a high school. She's got bangles and beads like this shit on, and she's drinking Southern Comfort, and she's spitting and using the F word, smoking cigarettes. Nobody did that back then.
She was a powerful
woman. And you're watching
woman.
her, and she's the power in song.
Yeah.
Take another little piece of my heart now. That's why I covered that on my country album. Yeah.
I did some drugs. I did some alcohol. I did, but that was mostly earlier on. My love affair with cocaine, which was what my drug of choice, was motivated by a few other things. I think about like not really deserving whatever I'd gotten and things like that. And also, I liked it. I mean, let's not forget that. Then I had fun, and it just eventually becomes something you can't keep doing.
But let's go back to the reason why ultimately you were doing it.
Right.
I have a theory, because I've talked to lots of people over the years. I have no degrees in psychology or anything, but you learn a lot listening to people over the years. And I think that what you just said about not deserving it is the ultimate root of all problems, is people not feeling worthy. Right. So even though you were the one in the family to be able to break out and to redefine all of the tragedies, and you would admit that that's a lot of tragedies for a while.
Yes.
Did you think for a while you were cursed? Did you buy into that the family was cursed?
No, but I did lose my faith in God for a time. You did? That's the first 2 years. That's what happened.
After Karen was murdered?
Yeah.
So I understand that when the man who murdered your sister was up for parole in 2009, you wrote a letter to the parole board.
Yeah.
What'd you say?
I looked at this earlier, but it's hard to say. She was so smart and good and decent. She wrote poetry and loved being alive. We could laugh for hours together. She had the greatest smile. She's my best friend and the best person I knew. She had so much to live for. I love my sister Karen. I miss her. I miss her in my bones. I was her big brother. I was supposed to protect her. I could not. I've never gotten over it. I was supposed to save her. I could not. It very nearly destroyed me. Yeah. And then I went on to say that, there were other victims. There were 6 other people that these guys killed. And there is an interesting thing about all this. I might be willing to forgive them. And that's because God forgives us, because that's part of what our thing is. But not if you're going to lie about it. And these guys, all of them, still say they weren't really involved. These guys still say, it wasn't really my fault. So I think if you know anything about kind of, atoning or coming to terms with things, you just, okay,
but
this is what I did.
Could you forgive them?
Maybe. It's just a maybe.
Your disease is just outside, just doing one-arm push-ups, just waiting for you, waiting to get you alone. Because alone, you lose to the disease. And now I finally feel okay and feel like I've got some strength.
What does it mean to feel okay?
It means that I've developed some safety nets around this, For some reason, it's obviously because I was on Friends, more people will listen to me. So I've got to take advantage of that. I've got to help as many people as I can.
6,000 AA meetings, therapy 30 years, 15 rehabs, maybe at least. Half of your life in treatment or in sober living houses?
They ran me into the emergency trauma room. And it was in there that my colon exploded. Well, I was put on an ECMO machine. And an ECMO machine, when you talk to any doctor, is a Hail Mary. It is the last thing that you do before people die. And there were 5 people that night that were put on ECMO machine, and I was the only one who survived. I was in that hospital for 5 months and, escaped death really narrowly. I drank before, and I just sort of drank this entire bottle of what was called Anwar's Baby Duck. That was the name of the wine. And I lay in the grass and just was in heaven. And I thought to myself, this must be the way that normal people feel all the time. By the time I was 18, I was drinking everything. I made a rule that I would never drink or take anything at work. So I would never do that, but I would show up blindly hungover.